All right, starting recording. So I guess we could start class. Hey, can anyone tell me, and I'm asking this not as a, it's not a gotcha question. I'm asking this as a serious question. Do you guys know why we're mapping veins?
Is it for bypasses?
Bypasses is
To see if they're insufficient.
an insufficiency. Okay. And that's pretty much it. It's a pretty easy answer to the question. But I was just going through this. I was going through the chapter, and of course, I know why I'm mapping. And then I realized it doesn't really. I feel like it's not telling you exactly why we're doing this. It tells you how to do it. So that's and you guys are right, basically. But let's go over that anyway. That's kind of the first thing I want to talk about. Then we'll talk a little bit about mapping procedure. Last chapter, actually, on just a DVT study, it talked a little bit about the calf pump, but I asked a couple of you in lab, and you seemed like you didn't quite know what that was. So it might have been not covered in class, or it might have been unclear in the class or in the book. And I think it's kind of an important thing. It's not a big deal, but it's worth discussing. So I got a new computer, so bear with me. It's actually really awesome. The only problem is I got to be careful not to tap too hard on the screen, because obviously it's a little annoying, and I didn't foresee this as being a problem, and apparently no one else in the world has either, because I couldn't find any answers other than tap quieter. Okay, so chapter 19, you guys have already done the workbooks for that. I got to look at that. Oh, and I don't know if you fully understood what I was saying, like at chapter 20 and beyond. I am literally going through, scanning what I can with an optical recognition, OCR, whatever. Although it's not working very well, so I'm mostly retyping every single question into Blackboard. That way, you guys can continue to do your work in the workbook, and then as I catch up to it, I'll publish the Blackboard. I'll publish it on Blackboard. You guys can just transfer your work over, and that way it's graded and it's in the gradebook immediately. And of course, I'll change it to an assignment. So I think that's it. Well, I'm back, as you guys know. Of course, I've seen you all in lab. Can't seem to get away. So, all right. So we do these for a couple of reasons, and you guys basically said bypass, and there could be several different kinds of bypasses we're talking about. A lot of them are, this is up here is a cabbage. Obviously, it doesn't really spell cabbage, but it kind of looks like the word, so that's what they call it, a cabbage. So if you hear someone say, "Oh, he's a cabbage," that doesn't mean he's a vegetable, or just means that he or she has had coronary artery bypass graft put in. And see, let's zoom in a little bit on this picture here. It's kind of cool. We have a coronary artery, one of the coronary arteries, and this one has a blockage in it, which is going to, if not already, well, I guess if it's already caused a heart attack, it's a little late for a cabbage, but if it's caused, if the damage is not irreversible, then they can add a graft. It actually looks like they added 2 grafts on this. It's probably a bad color to be using right now. Okay. Anyway, we have a couple of bypass grafts here. One coming, it looks like it's coming from the subclavian artery all the way down to a coronary artery, and then we have another one coming straight from the aortic arch. They just put it right into the side of the arch and down into another coronary artery. So they're bypassing this problem. Now they could use a number of arteries and veins. It doesn't have to be an artery, although it's kind of a nice, if you're dealing with arterial pressure, to use an artery. It doesn't have to be. I think arteries are generally better if they can be harvested. Harvesting, yes, we are sometimes harvested. It's like the matrix, we're being harvested. But the radial artery is one, so that's something that they could be looking at. The mammary artery goes, it is a superficial artery that obviously travels down the chest. And saphenous vein, either a great or lesser saphenous veins or part of the vein can be used as a graft material. Better to use endogenous graft material than fake material, which is bound to go bad anyway. And let's see, we have a picture here of someone who is prepped and ready, and they have been mapped. This person who mapped this, they probably, what they did is they went through and tap. They did little dots along the way, because it's hard to draw the entire line while you're using gel, of course. And then as they went along, they showed where some major, probably not every single little perforator and connection, let's say perforator, communication veins or intersaphenous veins, cutaneous veins. The perforating veins are probably the most important because those are the ones who are traveling down to the deep system. We'll talk about that in a second. Now, this is important for them to know. Like, I don't know exactly what they're doing with this patient, whether or not they're going to remove this entire saphenous vein, great saphenous vein. You can see it traveling in a very typical location along the leg here, past the knee. And from here, it can kind of go this way, it can go this way. It could do both, depending on the person's anatomy. You could have 2 main saphenous veins, and there will always be one that is dominant. And actually, there are also anterior accessory saphenous veins and posterior accessory saphenous veins, which we'll talk about as well. This person could be getting an open, which I don't think they are, just because I quickly read the headline when I was grabbing this picture that this was not going to be an open. Open would mean, let's use red to make it look really bloody. Open would be like literally filleting the leg, like filleting it, like slice all the way down, pull it apart, and the vein is right there. And so it's very easy to harvest and ligate. We can't simply pull out a vein and let all these guys bleed out. So that's obviously one problem. You don't want a person to bleed to death after this procedure. The other way is there are endoscopic means of removing this. But endoscopic, that's difficult because now you have to ligate these. In other words, tie them off. Ligating is tying them off. You have to ligate each one of these and then endoscopically pull this out like you're pulling out a string that holds your sweatpants up. You pull it all the way out. Now, you're never going to not think of it that way. And you're going to be like, oh, God. Why did Mr. S say that? So they could be removed. They could also be, this one's going to be removed. They could also be purposely thrombosed in the case of next chapter, which is, I don't know, varicose veins, valvular insufficiency, which causes varicose veins, is next chapter. They could be used as an in situ graft. In situ fempop. So this is an in situ fempop. What they've done here, if they've taken this vein, and you can see this right here, they've taken the vein and they've attached it to the artery superiorly or proximally, bypassed the junk, the occlusion here, and they've gone into the popliteal, and so now the rest of the leg is fed with blood. What's the problem with that, though? Anyone know? Anyone think of what kind of problems we might have? Nobody? Oh my gosh, you guys
Repeat
are...
the question. Sorry.
What would be the problem of just simply taking a vein like this? Let's zoom in a bit. Close. So we have this vein. Whoop. Okay, super straight saphenous vein here, and we decide to cut it off here and cut it off there and ligate it. So we'll make it. That means it's great. What did I touch? Okay, so it's been cut off and ligated. Why did I do so many lines? Okay, and attached here to here, just straight on over. So that's obviously what's going on here in the next picture. What would be a major problem with doing that? I'll give you a hint. Ooh, that's a big picture. Hold on. All right, so here's my artery heading downward. Down. Normally, of course, this blood is heading up. What are these things here?
Valves.
Valves, right? Thank you. I could hear them like valves. Yeah, what happens if I take this end here and I just connect it here and I connect this end down here, and the blood is trying, now the blood is traveling, let's see, give me red.
Wouldn't you have a lot of reverse flow because there's no valves anymore?
Well, there's no valves. Why aren't there any valves? We've just moved this over. Blood is now trying, red blood, arterial blood is now trying to go down, because that's what we're doing. That's what this graft is now. This vein has basically become an artery by attaching it here. Let's see, here and here. We run into valves. So
I'm sorry, but you're saying, so now, well, there's two things that I can think of so far. One, from what you just said, is that this section that we took and we put it into the arterial system now has valves when the arterial system normally doesn't have valves. And then the other one, you also, when you remove that vein, did you basically just clamp the where you severed from the top and the bottom? Did you basically sever that? So now you have no venous flow, or like now you have to have collateral flow because the blood has to figure out another way to get out of the leg?
Well, yeah. So fortunately, we have so many veins that doctors are more than happy to remove your entire saphenous vein, and they'll be like, it doesn't matter. You will, I mean, other than the fact that you just had something ripped out of your body, which is painful, you will have no blood flow issues. So actually, unfortunately, okay. So the fact that we no longer have a major vein is inconsequential. There's so many veins in the leg bringing blood back up. Now superficial veins, you remove the femoral vein, and okay, that's a different story because that's a major conduit. But superficial, even the great saphenous vein, can be removed without causing further causing problems getting blood out. What I'm getting to, point I'm getting to is this. Look at these valves here. And let's come back up. Where are we? Oh, it's tiny. Okay. Veins have these valves specifically so blood could only travel in one direction. Blood travels up a vein, it gets through the valve, and then when it tries to go back down because of gravity, or because of Valsalva, because we're standing, the blood comes down just a tiny bit, and then it hits the valve, and it basically stops. It cannot go back down because of these valves. Now, if I'm doing this graft, and I have a valve here, and let's say a valve here, but I'm trying to get blood down the leg, I'm running into a valve and a valve. And so there's one of two things that could be done. On an in situ bypass, you can use a valvulotome or rotor-rooter. So this is specially designed, this tool is specially designed to go up a major vein, and then as it comes back down, when the doctors pull it back, see these? Those are basically backwards facing blades. And so this literally slices the valves off. So now you have, because if you're going to use your vein as an artery, you can't have valves stopping it. It kind of defeats the purpose. The other possibility, and I think valvulotomes are more common today, but there's another possibility. Did I take a picture? No, I don't think I did. And that is, well, you probably have to do a fully filleted leg in order to do this. But you can take, oh, I wonder. Yes, awesome. All right. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Okay, so I've now, as a doctor, I have removed the vein entirely from the leg, turned it around. Now I've plugged it. Now I take this end, plug it in, this end, plug it in. I don't have to remove the valves now because my red blood, let's just go ahead and add a very nice red, the blood's coming down, It's now going to be bypassed, and it's go right through that valve without a problem because that's the direction. It's a one-way valve. I should probably mention there's absolutely no resistance going in this direction in a valve, but going in the other direction there is resistance, and so it goes all the way down and bypasses the junk. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So one of two things: you either remove the valves with a valvulotome, or you pick it up, turn it around. Obviously, turning it around might seem like a bigger deal. There's hemodynamic reasons that actually might be an advantage too, but I think most doctors just use a valvulotome because it's easier. You don't have to fillet the leg to do it. So let's see. The other reason we're mapping is chapter 20. So value insufficiency testing. And so I discovered all sorts of neat little tools here. If I have a valve here that is simply not working, and let's say I have many valves that are not working, and so what ends up happening is our nice blue blood, our blue venous blood goes up, never has a problem going through the valve in that direction because that's the natural way it opens, but then the valve tries to close and it doesn't, or maybe even back, goes backwards, and so now the blood goes right back down. And so with next chapter, we're going to talk about basically the effects of hydrostatic pressure, which is basically gravity, and what it does to our legs. And that eventually all of that reversal of flow is really bad for us. Okay. So that was kind of all off the cuff so far. Let me get back to, I took some notes, and so let's, all right, okay. Took this picture, grabbed this picture, because this guy's got nice veins. You could see his saphenous vein. Actually, I just thought of something. This is great. Okay. Okay, I'm just gonna, great saphenous vein. Remember, when we're talking about veins, technically, they start here and end at the heart, or they'll start distally. So technically speaking, this is proximal, but no one says it that way. So don't be confused. But technically, that's proximal in a vein because that veins start up high. Okay. So the vein starts. I think your book says the posterior medial malleolus, and I think it's maybe there's two veins here that come up, and here we are. Look at that. You can see his great saphenous vein sticking out from underneath the leg there. And we kind of lose it a little bit, but it's probably right about here. Comes all the way up, and dives into the common femoral vein right there. And that's where you guys have seen in transverse. You sometimes see this little bunny. I never called it the bunny, but I guess Dr. G did. It does look like a bunny. If this is the right side, the right leg. That's the great saphenous vein. And actually this one is this one. Looks like right there is the, I'm going to write it down here, there's more room. Sorry about the tapping sound. Anterior accessory great saphenous vein. Is it anterior accessory great saphenous or anterior? It's right here. Yes, anterior accessory great saphenous vein, page 260. There's been some nomenclature changes. And that is this guy. Now let's erase some, oh shoot, I can't erase. Darn it, I can't, gonna erase. Okay, well there's vein there, and then there's actually a vein that comes around here and probably comes back up eventually, and that would be the posterior accessory saphenous vein there. Most people have one vein like this picture over here, but it is possible to have two saphenous veins. It's possible that it splits into two and then comes back into one. Let's look at your notes, Kurt. Begins at posterior when multiple variants exist. Rarely is the anterior X dominant. Yeah. So the book goes through some variants. I think all we really need to know is that there are variants. It could be the anterior accessory vein, which normally pretty much you lose it. You cannot follow it past the knee, although it does travel. If it's dominant, you will see it travel down, but it's very rarely dominant. I don't think I've ever seen it. I will tell you, another Kurt story. So the first time I had to do a mapping, I had never done one. I had never seen one. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I read a little bit real quickly in a book. I told the nurses that I was not competent to do it, and they said they didn't care. The doctor wants it done. I'm like, okay, because it was a Saturday and he was going to come in on Sunday and do surgery. I was supposed to follow the great saphenous vein, and lo and behold, I followed the anterior accessory great saphenous vein, and I lost it around the knee, and the doctor lost it the next day. When he gets into surgery, he immediately sees what I did and realized that I followed the wrong vein and flipped out. And my colleagues were like, he told you he didn't know what he was doing. So I learned how to do it after that. But a lot of people don't know how to map. And I still, to this day, I don't have a lot of experience mapping. I've certainly done some, and it's pretty straightforward. If you just have to know what your doctor expects of you. Anyway.
Will you be teaching us that in class one day? Like how to map?
Yeah, we could do some mapping. We'll just, we'll map, I think, along with learning how to do reflex exams. Now it's hard because most of us don't have any reflux. There might be one person who does, might be. I really haven't studied that person. I just kind of was looking over his shoulder. But yeah, we could do some mapping then. So when you're looking at the great saphenous vein and the small saphenous vein, both of them are sitting inside of the fascia plane. It's technically the saphenous fascia and muscle fascia, and these two are the double. It's a double fascia, and then it opens up, and there's fat inside of here and everything. If you're following what you believe to be the great saphenous vein, and it becomes more anterior, let's pretend this is one big leg here. Here's the surface of the leg, and instead of seeing it down here, you start to see it here. Well, that happens. In fact, on this person, I wish I can go back and erase some of this without erasing the entire leg. You can see his saphenous veins, his great saphenous vein and his accessory saphenous veins so clearly that I suspect that it has exited the fascia and gone up here. Well, that sometimes happens. It also sometimes means that you're not actually following the great saphenous vein. You might be following another saphenous vein. The anterior is more likely to be outside of a fascia, but the great saphenous vein is supposed to be in this fascia. If you are following it and it does come out of the fascia, and you are doing, well, and you're doing a mapping, if you're simply doing an SVT, superficial venous thrombosis study, you're just seeing whether or not there's clot in there, not a big deal. But if you're mapping this, you need to tell the doctor, because there's a couple of things. Got very demanding cats. All right, there's a couple of things. Well, I mean, there's one possibility is a doctor puts his blade in too deep and fillets the vein that he's trying to harvest. That's one possibility. But another possibility is that you're doing this for a future ablation. So if a person has really bad varicose veins, they're better off not having the vein at all. So they'll actually ablate the entire saphenous vein. I've done a number of those. And the thing is, that ablation, if you're using either laser or radio frequency, it actually produces a lot of heat. And when it's very close to the surface, it could actually do damage to the tissue around it. So that's another reason. So basically, when you're doing a mapping, if it comes out of the fascia, we should mention it. Let's see, usually terminates back to, yeah. Okay, so as we're traveling down the leg, we are going to run into well, let's go ahead and use this little picture here. And this is a pretty simple picture, but it kind of gets to the point. Lots of branches, and so you're traveling down, and how should I draw this? Well, you can have a I'll draw a perforator vein actually. So you're going in here deep. Let's do a little fascia here, and then here's your, let's say your great sap. Oh, this is called the Egyptian eye or Cleopatra's eye. I mean, hell, a lot of girls are wearing that today. Anyway, they take their mascara and make a little cat's eye on it. Oh, it's kind of cute. By the way, there's a couple of things that could happen. You could have a cutaneous vein, and so as you're coming down, ooh, that's way too big. As you're coming down, you see a little branch come off, and Go like that, maybe. Well, that's coming up. Let's see, here's a patient's skin. This could be a cutaneous branch. Yes, cutaneous, okay. Those are, as far as mapping is concerned, they're usually not of much concern, but they can become varicose veins, so really enlarged veins. And if they're enlarged, you could go ahead and mark them, although you could probably see them on the skin anyway. So these are some of the things that you could see. The other possibility is brilliant. Okay. The other possibility is, well, now let's go ahead and we'll draw it like this. I'll just kind of exaggerate this. Whoops. That's not what I meant. Okay. It can go from saphenous to saphenous. That's not really well drawn, but let's just say this is the great saphenous vein, and then this one is the small saphenous vein. You could have a communicating, or better known as a intersaphenous vein. Those are a little more important. No. I just hit the wrong button. Oh, darn it. Okay. And then there are the most important ones. Let's make it look horrible. Perforated with an F. Yes, perforator vein. And these guys have valves which allow blood to travel from superficial to deep. These guys are a little more important. So anytime with your mapping, if you see a perforator, you mark on the skin where the perforator is. And also we mark on the worksheet. So as a double whammy, because those are really important to know. Some of these are more important to know because let's say you're ablating the great saphenous vein. And there's different ways of ablating. There's heat, there's radio frequency, lasers, radio frequencies. There are foam agents. And, you know, a large perforator, you might want to, you might not want foam to travel all the way down into the deep system. Oh, I'm sorry. This is like a, let's just call this the femoral vein down here. But yeah, you don't want foam to travel all the way down there. Or perhaps you're doing an in situ bypass and you don't ligate. And remember the in situ bypass. We're going to make this. We're going to make this into an artery, right? Because we need to bypass a bad part of the artery. So we'll go ahead and make that bypass. But if we don't ligate this off, if the doctor doesn't know about this vessel, well, blood's going to go. Let's see, explaining it's one thing, but I think I need to draw that one. I'm not going to use those again. Let's just use red for artery. yellow for crud in the artery. And then blue for vein. So we attach up here and we attach back down here, right? So we've made this bypass graft here, and let's say we used a valvulotome so there's no valves left in there, and blood's traveling, down. It's now bypassing that bad part of the vein, or I'm sorry, artery, which is all well and good. The problem is now, if we're not paying attention, and this person had a, so I gotta get rid of you. I need a deep vein. Let's put my deep vein. Well, I'll put my deep vein over here. Deep vein. And you know what? This just wasn't a good place to put it. Well, let's put it over here so I don't have to draw over stuff. And I wasn't paying attention. And there was a perforator that went from this. This used to be the great saphenous vein. Now it's the great saphenous bypass graft. But it had a perforator in it that we didn't notice and the doctor didn't know about. Now, what is that blood flow going to do? It's going to take the path of least resistance. So now you have a high velocity arterial venous fistula has now been formed. So important to find as many of these as you can. The problem is, guys, I'm not going to lie. These are hard. These are hard to find. Unless they're unhealthy, they're very hard to find. The other veins are not as important. If we missed a cutaneous vein, there might be some reversal of flow, but it's just a cutaneous vein. There's not going to be a major AV fistula created. The other ones are important. The communication veins or the intersaphenous veins, because an intersaphenous vein would be one that went from, let's say, this great saphenous to the small saphenous. Let's see, think about it. Blood flow, blood flow, blood flow. Yeah, that can cause problems as well. Less likely though, because of where these take place, but certainly the perforator veins are the most important. In this case, because of AV fistulas. In other cases, because you don't want to accidentally purposely create thrombus. Well, you're purposely creating thrombus in a vein, in a superficial vein, and then it goes down into the deep vein. That's a bad thing too. Okay, let me look at my notes as I'm. So perforators and great saphenous veins are used as an arterial in situ conduit of blood may follow. Yep, I talked about that. Small saphenous vein. Location of the small saphenous vein is dead center. Ooh, just actually got a couple of pictures on that. I think you guys know where the small saphenous vein is. Well, here's a picture anyway. Usually dead center. Dead center back of the leg. Starts down on either side of the Achilles tendon area down here and heads up. Small saphenous vein usually enters the popliteal or ends at the popliteal. It can go past that. If it does, it is just simply called the cranial extension of the small saphenous vein. In my experience, what I see happen is the small saphenous vein has a branch that goes down to the popliteal, and then part of it continues on up. There is a term in your book that you might have read. It's called the vein of Giacomini. I may or may not have spelled that correctly. I think there's a double. Giacomini. Find an Italian person to find out if I said that correctly. Giacomini. That was a very specific variant. It would bypass the popliteal, continue up the leg, and find the medium circumflex. Oh, actually, I have it written down. Posterior thigh circumflex, and then which would then go back to the deep system. It would be so hard for anyone to truly recognize that. So I think this term entirely is going out because it's really difficult to know if it's a vein of Giacomini versus just a simple cranial extension. So what these cranial extensions do is let's see if I could use.
Kurt, I have a question.
Uh-huh.
So we only look at that whenever we're mapping. We wouldn't look at the small saphenous in a regular exam.
Yeah, that's the one. Our bread and butter is the EVT exam. In most locations, we'll be doing EVTs a lot. Some people will follow the great saphenous, small saphenous veins. If you're not indicated, I don't see that as a real good idea because it's just, you're usually quite busy.
Okay, you're echoing really bad. I didn't understand a word you said.
Oh, sorry. I got tricked.
I did like a villain from a cartoon or something.
So the question was, do you do these regularly? No. You're generally only doing.
You sound like a robot. We can't actually.
Something wrong with your mic.
Is that any chance?
No, you still sound the same.
All right. Can you understand that at all?
Not really. Okay.